Good evening, I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. Hurricane Florence is sweeping through the Carolinas. We're going to keep you updated with critical reports throughout the hour. And now Democrats scrambling with their 11th hour smears against Brett Kavanaugh. Plus, new explosive page-struck texts blow the lid open on a media FBI loop that looks like it was meant to take Trump out from the beginning. Oh, that's a shock. And Maxine Waters compares Trump's immigration policy to, you guessed it, slavery. All that ahead. And, of course, the Friday Follies with Raymond Arroyo, so stick around for that. But first, let's go right to Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan, who's in Topsail Beach in North Carolina. Steve, what do you see?
Laura, outside of the camera lights and police lights, much of this part of the coast of North Carolina is in the dark. More than 500,000 North Carolinians without electric power, many in homes that have been damaged by the winds, damaged by flooding. That means they have no air conditioning, no TV, no cell phone service, and some of them are in life-threatening conditions. Now, the rescues have begun already. People coming from around the country, swift boat rescue teams from at least 19 states here. That's one of the remarkable things about these storms. It really brings out the volunteers from all over. The police chief here said they're going to set out at first light to see some areas they have not yet seen. We've finally gotten a break after 30 hours from that pounding rain and wind. That wind strong enough to damage houses along the coast. Not major structural damage, but bits and pieces. Some parts of roofs, balconies, things like that blown off, making the roads very treacherous for travel. But they'll start out tomorrow morning to try and help those people who, as those floodwaters continue to rise here across the state. Laura, back to you.
All right, Steve, thanks so much. Stay safe. And now let's get to Fox News correspondent Rick Leventhal, who's in Wilmington, North Carolina. Rick.
And, Laura, I just want to update Steve's numbers. There are now roughly 800,000 customers across North Carolina without power, including, as far as we can tell, everyone here in Wilmington. Wrightsville Beach was in the dark as well, where we were for the last few days. And the water there today rose to the highest it's ever been, almost 5 feet above high tide. So the roads there were completely flooded for hours today, and a lot of homes put at risk. We drove from there into a neighborhood just on the other side of the Intracoastal and saw dozens of trees that had toppled, a lot of branches down, and big old trees, some of them 50 years old or more, that were blocking roads. They weren't letting anyone in except residents and tree companies because they need to clear all that debris out of the way. The roads, treacherous, many flooded areas, and the traffic lights are all out. We saw state troopers at a lot of intersections because there's no traffic lights working in this part of North Carolina, and they expect things to continue to get worse. The trees coming down is a bigger problem than people might realize. A tree fell on a house here in Wilmington earlier today and killed a woman and her infant child, and the husband was also injured. He was taken to the hospital, but 2 of the 5 dead were from a tree coming down, and someone else died when they were trying to plug in a generator and plug in an extension cord. So a lot of the hazards come, Laura, as you know, after the hurricane passes. But by the way, it's still storming out here. We had a band come through minutes ago that was almost as ferocious as the hurricane itself. So they're expecting more of these bands to come through as the night goes on, and the rain to continue for 2 or 3 more days. So the flooding hazards will continue for a while here.
Thanks so much, Rick. Rick and Steve, 2 of the hardest working reporters out there covering Hurricane Florence. And we'll continue to bring you live updates from North Carolina throughout the hour. Meanwhile, the Me Too movement has become, let's face it, a powerful force as victims have come forward to make accusations against those who they say abuse them. We've seen this in Hollywood, major figures taken out, the media, major figures taken out, and politics, ditto. First-hand accounts backed up by witnesses have led to some of the accused admit their guilt in the end. Which brings us to the latest charges against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Now, in this case, no one has come forward, and witnesses dispute the charge. But the New Yorker is reporting allegations of an unnamed woman who claims that Kavanaugh, while in high school, tried to force himself upon her. Now, Kavanaugh is vehemently denying it took place in high school or at any time, and the only other corroborating witness has no recollection of it whatsoever. So what are we left with? A nearly 4 decades old anonymous charge released late in the game. Now, remember we told you last night that Senator Dianne Feinstein had a letter containing allegations back in July related to this. Well, she chose to sit on it. So she let Brett Kavanaugh go through a series of Senate meetings, 3 days worth of seemingly unending testimony on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and answer 263 pages worth of follow-up questions. But now, at the last minute, the Democrats drop this bombshell on him, and some of these media people just lap it up. It's all eerily reminiscent of what the Democrats did to my old boss, Clarence Thomas, 25-plus years ago after a leaked FBI memo. They reopened his confirmation proceedings so that they could basically publicly humiliate Thomas and his family.
How would any member on this committee, any person in this room, or any person in this country would like sleaze said about him or her in this fashion, or this dirt dredged up, and this gossip and these lies displayed in this manner? How would any person like it? The Supreme Court is not worth it. No job is worth it. I'm not here for that. I'm here for my name, my family, my life, and my integrity.
The Kavanaugh case has an all too familiar taint, doesn't it? Detailed, legitimate concerns should be dealt with in the FBI background check process, or then followed up at, of course, in the public hearings, not in this 11th hour media circus. Joining us now with reaction is Megan McCaleb. She's one of 65 women who knew Kavanaugh in high school who wrote a letter supporting him. Helgi Walker worked with Brett Kavanaugh in the White House counsel's office, and Porter Wilkinson is a former clerk for Judge Kavanaugh. Helgi, let's start with you. Of the entire panel, probably you've known Brett Kavanaugh the longest, and I'm livid about what they're doing to him. I can imagine you are as well. Your reaction?
Laura, you and I have been friends with Judge Kavanaugh. We used to call him Brett for 25 years. I've also worked with him in the White House counsel's office side by side every day. He treated me like a serious lawyer, like his equal, like his teammate in every fashion. He took me seriously. He debated issues with me. This is a man who treats women with the utmost respect, courtesy. He's a complete gentleman. He's a kind and a gentle and a decent person. And it makes me upset, too, Laura, that somebody who is willing to be on the Supreme Court, who we are fortunate to have a person of those qualifications be willing to serve, to be smeared like this at the very last minute with such an obvious attempt to try to stop him or at least tarnish him in some way, because some people just can't accept the fact that he is so well qualified,
he's gonna get confirmed,
and that he is going to be on the Supreme Court.
Megan, I want to go to you because there has been some whispering around Washington about this letter, the 65 classmates who signed this letter in support of Judge Kavanaugh, and it was said that this letter had been written long ago. Is that the case? Because I know you signed it. I just want to clear that up once and for all.
No, that is absolutely not the case. We got wind of this yesterday. From my husband received a call from a reporter with those allegations, and we couldn't believe it. Absolutely couldn't believe it. I've known Brett since I was a freshman in high school, and we knew we had to rally around him.
I mean, so you've known him since high school. You've known him longer than even we have, and is anything in his character indicate behavior such as that is alleged today, again, by an anonymous person in a letter that Feinstein sat on since July? Anything in his background or character?
Absolutely nothing. He always treated us with girls with respect, always. And it was simple to find 65 women to sign that letter from 5 different high schools. Everybody jumped on board and was happy to sign it on his behalf, and they all saw it and agreed with it.
I have to say, I think this is a big embarrassment for the Me Too movement. There are legitimate claims that have been raised and voiced, and people put their names behind those claims and accusations, even if they're long ago. This is someone who refuses to give her name for whatever reason, and it ends up in the hands of Dianne Feinstein and never released. Porter, I have to ask you about this. What about those circumstances? Dianne Feinstein doing this in this way?
Well, I'm not a political commentator, and so I don't have a lot to say about the way that Dianne Feinstein has handled this, besides for the fact that I believe that she takes the concerns of women seriously. And if she thought that there was a serious, credible allegation here, that she would have come forth sooner and said something during the FBI background check or the hearing.
Tell us about Judge Kavanaugh, the boss.
I was a law clerk to Judge Kavanaugh in 2007 and 2008, and I worked closely with him day in and day out, helping him prepare for cases and decide cases. And he is unfailingly kind and respectful, and a man of the highest character, unassailable integrity. And these allegations are flatly inconsistent with the man that I've known well for over a decade. You know what's amazing, ladies, is that there was a tweet from Obama's top guy, Brian Fallon, the campaign, or was it Hillary's campaign, excuse me. And he tweeted this out today in response to this Emily Singer tweet. Emily Singer tweeted, makes the whole bring in the daughters basketball team and talk about how great a coach he was look even more transparent. And then Fallon tweets back, and his emphasis on hiring women clerks. I'd like you to respond to that. So in other words, he hired female clerks for 12 years in anticipation of being nominated to the Supreme Court. Porter. Yeah. Laura, I'm not alone in my assessment of Judge Kavanaugh. I think you know that women from every phase of his life have written letters to the Senate Judiciary Committee supporting his nomination. Every single one of his female clerks who wasn't prohibited from signing a letter based on their current employment vouched for his character, his integrity, the fact that it is because of him that they are succeeding in their careers.
There's a moment in an interview I did with Justice Thomas last November, when we just started the Ingraham angle, about whether this whole process and what he went through, again, an 11th hour hit, a leaked FBI memo that was already investigated by the FBI and dismissed, accusations by Anita Hill. And this is what he said. Let's watch. 28 years ago, you went through the worst confirmation spectacle in history. Was it worth it?
I think we are called to do certain things. I don't think anyone would choose to go through unpleasantness, but if it has to be that to do what is right, then so be it.
Helgi.
Well, I clerked for Justice Thomas like you did, Laura. We're part of that special family, and it's just so disappointing that the confirmation process and the Senate Judiciary Committee has sunk so low. We could be having a conversation about the Constitution. We could be having a conversation about the 300 opinions that Judge Kavanaugh has written. We could be talking about the future of our country. Instead, we're talking about trash, smut, anonymous allegations, and even Justice Ginsburg yesterday, a liberal icon, a fighter for women's rights, respected by so many people across the aisle, said the confirmation process the way it is now is wrong. So if liberals don't believe Justice Ginsburg, then I don't know who they'll listen to.
Megan, have you been in touch with Judge Kavanaugh? How is he doing? How is his family doing throughout this process? It certainly was rough in that confirmation hearing, especially when they had the planned protests and you had, all the usual suspects disrupting the proceedings for so long.
You know, I saw them at the hearings, and they're doing as well as to be expected.
Yeah. Well, there was one moment. There was one moment last night, and I want you guys to respond. Maybe Helgi. This is Lawrence O'Donnell raising this issue of this allegation. Let's watch.
The fact that the senator and Congresswoman Eshoo issued statements about it today and took this step, Senator Feinstein took the step to the FBI, is where we are now, and we do not know where we're going to be tomorrow.
No, this is, I mean, we overuse the word unprecedented, but for Supreme Court nominations, even with the Clarence Thomas background, this is absolutely unprecedented.
It really is.
This is just so pathetic. I'm sorry. Even Morning Joe this morning had to say, this is kind of, I mean, even they can't stand Trump at Morning Joe. Even they were saying, come on, guys, this is, you've made a mockery of the Senate confirmation process for the Supreme Court. Look, we have all these incredibly impressive women. Porter, who's not a political person, decided to come on and put her name out there tonight. Obviously, Megan, you did the same thing. Helgi, you have better things to do. But you're out here to stand against unfairness.
And I would like American women to know that all of the women on this set today are accomplished, impressive women, excluding myself, who have things to say, and we all think he's great. And would you take the word of people who've known him for 25 years, or would you listen to this ridiculous last-minute character assassination?
All of you, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Porter, Helgi, Megan, and what an embarrassment for the media. First, this desperate attempt to smear Kavanaugh. Then they reported a story about a U.S. ambassador early this morning that turns out to be totally false. The New York Times hit piece indicated that Nikki Haley had spent nearly $53,000, indicated, on curtains in her residence in New York, except guess what? It wasn't Trump's State Department. It was Obama's. So the Times is now walking back that story. Like, if you're going to do a hit job, don't fall flat on your face, my friends. Joining me now with the reaction is Howie Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz, which airs Sundays here on FNC. Howie, how are you? Big news night for a Friday night. And we have to hit this Nikki Haley thing first, because this seems reminiscent of, what, the Ben Carson spending too much money and Scott Pruitt flying around on and now it's Nikki Haley. Something didn't ring true to me when I heard it. What really happened?
One of the worst headlines I have ever seen in the New York Times or any other newspaper, trying to paint Nikki Haley as some kind of out of control Scott Pruitt spending tens of thousands of dollars on unnecessary luxuries. Except when you read down to the fourth paragraph of the story, it says that she had nothing to do with this purchase of these $50,000 curtains. It was the Obama State Department, as you say. And the editor's note says, well, gee, we created an unfair impression and we should not have focused on Nikki Haley. What was missing is two things. One is the story should have been obliterated, blown up, digitally erased, because it no longer has any reason to be, and there should be an apology from the paper to Nikki Haley.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that there was an editor's note. Who reads an editor's note? That's like way down at the bottom of the story. I mean, that's it? They're able to do that at the New York Times, assail her character, which essentially is what it was, and then add a little blip at the end?
Well, at least there was some acknowledgement of all the criticism with the editor's note. I just don't think the editor's note went far enough. Not only was it a bad headline, when you say that it was unfair to frame this as a Nikki Haley expenditure, then the story simply has no reason
But Howie, they should be publishing above the fold in tomorrow's paper, a print edition, if they want to gain a shred of credibility back. Because the New York Slimes, I'm sorry, it's what they are now, is proving themselves to be another extension of the DNC. That's all it is. DNC, Obama, Hillary, whatever it is, but the old gray lady is it should be red-faced with shame after just that one piece. I got to ask you about this Ronan Farrow getting this memo, though, today. And again, it's the same letter that Dianne Feinstein gets. He gets it. Then he goes on TV and starts talking about it. Well, he won the Pulitzer Prize. He has a lot of credibility in reporting these issues. Obviously, Weinstein, what NBC did to stop that story, and other cases like it. But I was kind of surprised that he decided to kind of like go on television and talk about this, given how thin and how old and how uncorroborated this particular allegation is.
Yeah. Well, before Ronan Farrow did that today, I think most of the media were sort of cautious about what had all the earmarks of a late hit. I mean, mysterious letter, anonymous accuser about something that may allegedly have happened when Brett Kavanaugh was 17 years old. But Ronan Farrow, because of his credibility in reporting on Harvey Weinstein, on Les Moonves, sort of gave the rest of the media cover to now go on TV and yak about it. He did not interview this woman. He got a hold of the memo. And, you know, I admire his reporting, but I think it's fair to point out that he worked for the Obama State Department.
Again, I will say, what he did on the other stories, that's called shoe leather reporting. This is taking a little gift wrapped up from Dianne Feinstein and going on television and say, okay, everybody else, you're clear. You have cover to go off and talk about this as if it's something that happened, 5 years ago in his office over there at the D.C. Circuit. I'm telling you, this is an insult to real assault cases and real sexual harassment. Women who've been victimized should see this for what it is, a pure political attack, late hit on a great man. I really appreciate you. Go ahead, last word.
We just don't know the details because the accuser is anonymous. And unlike Anita Hill, who at least testified and was cross-examined, the media need to be extraordinarily careful, Laura, about not being used in an 11th hour smear.
I appreciate it, Howie Kurtz. And Paul Manafort has accepted a plea deal with his special counsel, Bob Mueller, and Trump haters celebrating. Joe DeGeneva explains why they might want to save the confetti, plus some explosive new text between Strzok and Page. All that next.
All you have to do is look at the plea. The plea is to crimes that have to do with Manafort's past. No involvement with President Trump, no involvement with the campaign, no involvement with Russia. And by the way, there's also no evidence of obstruction. There have been 4 guilty pleas now, and they're completely irrelevant.
That was Rudy Giuliani moments ago with Sean Hannity shredding the narrative of the resistance after Paul Manafort agreed to plead guilty in a deal with special counsel Bob Mueller today. And despite the media proclamations all day long, we still don't know that Manafort is cooperating with Mueller's team against President Trump. Joining me now to break it all down, Joe DeGeneva is a former U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., and Kendall Coffey, former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Gentlemen, great to see both of you. Joe, you said earlier today, I believe, that this is a Potemkin village. This is a mirage. Tell our viewers why that is.
Well, this was done for the benefit of Mr. Mueller and the benefit of Mr. Manafort. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with Mr. Mueller's mandate. It prevents Mr. Manafort from getting consecutive time. It also prevents Mr. Mueller from having to go through a trial and waste resources. And it also permits Mr. Manafort to cooperate in the ongoing investigation by Mueller of Tony Podesta and of others, including Gregory Craig, formerly of the law firm Skadden Arps. So all in all, I would say the walls are closing in, but not on the president.
Kendall, I want to go to you because Alan Dershowitz called this a big deal today. He said, basically this was not great news for the administration. He also then discussed the issue of a possible pardon and the timing of a pardon for Paul Manafort. Let's watch.
I think once he agrees to cooperate, he has to cooperate about everything. There's no such thing as partial cooperation. The question is, did he cooperate too late? Would he have been better off cooperating before his first trial? I think he was perhaps hoping for a pardon. And then the question comes up, did the president act too late? If he was going to pardon, he'd have been much better off pardoning early rather than waiting until he's already cooperated.
Kendall, your thoughts on the pardon issue and the overall development today with the Manafort plea?
Well, it doesn't look like a pardon is going to happen. Manafort may have waited for one, hopefully, and then decided he had to throw in the towel. But I don't agree that this is a major, major event. Manafort really had no choice after he lost the first trial. And if indeed he had the goods on the president, don't you think he would have been cooperating a long time ago if he had that kind of leverage? If we look at this set of criminal charges and compare it to Michael Cohen, now the Michael Cohen charges did try to take an aim at the president. This doesn't do anything like that. And in fact, if you look at the charges, rather than suggesting collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, it suggests collusion between Manafort and Democrats with respect to the apparently, allegedly illegal efforts to lobby on behalf of Ukrainian government forces.
Yeah, and before we get to the Strzok Page text, Joe, you mentioned briefly Greg Craig, former Obama White House counsel for the first year of the administration. He is now, I guess they're weighing federal charges against him in the Southern District of New York as an unregistered foreign agent and against his old law firm, Skadden Arps, which, full disclosure, I worked for 20 years ago. But that's an interesting development. For people who haven't been following this, they're sucking up perhaps the Podestas, sucking up Greg Craig. Again, none of it related to Trump, but it is related to the idea of working on behalf of foreign countries and not disclosing it. So where's the collusion there?
Well, there is none for President Trump and his campaign. There is plenty there for the Democrats, not only the derivation of the dossier and the working with Russian officials to generate it through Christopher Steele, but it was obvious, and that's why Podesta, Tony Podesta, had to close his lobbying form because they had never registered as foreign agents. And that case was turned over, and it's now quite evident that the Southern District of New York is investigating both Gregory Craig for his role in the undisclosed Ukraine work in the United States and Mr. Podesta. This is all quite good for the president because it makes his point quite beautifully and I must say with some fashion. This is where the rubber meets the road. There never has been any evidence of collusion by the President of the United States and his campaign, and actually the plea by Manafort today simply underscores that.
Yeah, and it's not clear that Manafort is cooperating on Trump, could be cooperating on the Greg Craig Podesta issue instead. I want to move on, though, to another big story. Tonight, more explosive text just released between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. And it includes this exchange. Check it out from December 19th, 2016, right after the election. Strzok texts Page the following. It will make your head spin to realize how many stories we played a personal role in. Page responds, sheesh, this has been quite a year, and forwards a link to the New York Times most read stories of 2016. Kendall, what does this tell you about the paramour's involvement with the media in setting a narrative against Trump and his associates?
Yeah, it's deeper and worse than we thought. And we already thought it was pretty bad. They talked about stopping the Trump candidacy. Now they're orchestrating a media campaign. And by the way, throwing some things in there, how they're going to maybe set up some pretexts for interviews, coordinating ongoing leaks, obviously aimed at the Trump administration. So this is a serious thing. And what's going to be difficult is trying to understand and nail down how much influence did they have on others who were involved. They were high-ranking people. They were involved at critical periods during all of this. But where does the influence end, and how do we diagnose just how much of a taint there is on this?
Yeah. And Lindsey Graham, of course, has called for a second special counsel, Joe DeGeneva. Jeff Sessions, God bless him, Rod Rosenstein, this is screaming investigation. We have the Inspector General investigation ongoing, but this needs a Justice Department regular process investigation or a special counsel. This is ridiculous. Setting up a pretext for interviews of Trump officials based on leaks that they planted in the media. So it's like it's this feedback loop in order to get the Trump folks. This is they call Trump an autocrat. This is maddening.
As I've been saying for 2 years, there was a brazen plot to illegally exonerate Hillary Clinton in the email case, and then if she lost, to frame Donald Trump. And that is exactly what these texts are about. Whether or not Mr. Strzok and Lisa Page and others are indicted is certainly a question people can debate. But let me just say, I know that there is a grand jury underway. Testimony is being taken about Strzok, Page, McCabe, and others involved in this case. And the reason we know it is that James Baker, the former general counsel of the FBI, has turned state's evidence and is fully cooperating with the Inspector General and with the federal grand jury. I can assure you, Mr. Comey has been very silent in recent weeks, and the reason is very simple. He knows he's going to be indicted.
Wow, pretty explosive on a Friday night. Joe and Kendall, thanks so much. And up next, some appalling comments from Chelsea Clinton about abortion and the reboot that Les Moonves should be most worried about. Our Friday Folly segment with Raymond Arroyo coming up. And we'll head back to North Carolina for a live update on Florence's incredibly destructive path. Don't move. Now, Tropical Storm Florence is currently inundating the Carolinas with unprecedented rainfall, wreaking havoc across the region, power outages in the hundreds of thousands. For more, let's go to Fox News correspondent Leland Vittert. Leland, last time we talked was this morning on radio, but last night you had made very, very close friends with a beautiful, tall, lanky lamppost. So what does tonight bring, Leland?
Well, my savior, the lamppost, is over there. Thank you very much, Mr. Lamppost. You saved me last night. Boy, what a difference 24 hours makes. You probably wouldn't want to go for a romantic stroll here in Moorhead, North Carolina. But it's not that terrible out. We still have the rain coming down. We've had 24 inches so far here, and that's going to be really the story of Florence. There is wind damage clearly over on Atlantic Beach. There's roofs blown off, there's stores destroyed, but not utter devastation sometimes that you see with really huge, powerful hurricanes. This is going to be a flooding hurricane, which means it's going to take another couple of days to figure out just how bad this is. Already talked to the captain of one of the boats that's normally here. He said there are parts now that his friends can't get to, that no one can get to, that are completely cut off and destroyed as the floodwaters continue to rise. He said, though, the most important thing about people here is they come together as a community. All of these are small communities. He said, we don't ask for help, we don't need it, we just get it done. And coming up, there's going to be a lot to get done, Laura.
Leland, please stay safe out there, and it's good to see you tonight. And great work all throughout this hurricane, which means that, you know, look, it's Friday, and what does that mean? It's time for Friday Follies. Chelsea Clinton may need to atone after some remarks about abortion that she just made. Chelsea Clinton is in a little bit of hot water because she made a remark about an issue which is a little rough.
In religion, which is the problem.
Yeah, well, for answers, we're joined by New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series, Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, Chelsea was on Sirius XM radio today, made some alarming remarks. What's going on?
Yes, she did. Listen to this, Lord. This is a town hall meeting, a left-of-center one. She's clearly setting herself up for a political run. Watch.
When I think about all of the statistics that are painful of what women are confronting, Zerlina, today in our country, and what even more women confronted pre-Roe, we just can't go back to that. Like, that's unconscionable to me. And also, and I'm sure that this will unleash another wave of hate in my direction, but as a deeply religious person, it's also unchristian to me.
So it's unchristian to stop people from having abortions. Now, look, no matter where you stand on this issue, and it is a deeply hurtful issue for a lot of people and a wrenching one, to suggest that people who defend life are somehow acting in an unchristian manner, the men and women who, through their religion, believe their religion compels them to protect innocent life. These are remarks that I think people are going to be outraged.
And she says, well, it's going to unleash hate. No, it not unleashes hate, it's disbelief. Like, you can disagree about this issue, but it's almost, you're questioning the Christian beliefs of those who believe it's right to protect the most vulnerable.
Right. And you'll remember a month ago she said abortion actually contributed $3.5 trillion to the economy because all the mothers then went into the workplace because they were free of having children.
How about those millions of babies who weren't born?
Right, who weren't contributing to the economy. All of this reminded me of Nancy Pelosi, who you remember, the theologian in 2008, had this to say.
As an ardent practicing Catholic, this is an issue that I have studied for a long time. And what I know is over the centuries, the doctors of the church have not been able to make that definition. And St. Augustine said at 3 months. We don't know.
St. Augustine considered abortion evil violence and said it was deeply immoral. So Nancy Pelosi, I mean, she's many things. She can whip up votes. Theologian, I'd
move over St. Thomas Aquinas because Nancy Pelosi's in town.
Laura, as you know, Les Moonves was ejected from CBS after 6 more women came forward accusing him of abuse. And the CBS board is investigating to see how big of a severance package he'll get. Now, his wife, Julie Chen, appeared finally on Big Brother, a show she has hosted for 18 years. Here she is last night as she closed out the hour. Watch.
I'm Julie Chen Moonves. Good night.
The first time she is ever identified as Julie Chen Moonves as a sign of support for her husband.
I thought Les was going to pop out of that door.
He was going to be.
That would have been more fun.
Well, had the
I'm back.
Had the cameras of Big Brother been in the CBS hallways, we might, really have a show on our hands.
This was the finale.
Well, that was the finale of that for the season. But other women at CBS from days past are now coming forward, like Linda Bloodworth Thomason, who was responsible for Designing Women. She has a harrowing account where she says he ended her career and killed many shows with women in the lead. She wrote one thing in the Hollywood Reporter. This is kind of terrifying. Of a major actress. She said, coming off the cancellation of her iconic detective show, the star began pitching a new one. He informed her that she was too old to be on the network. She began to cry and stood up to go. He stood up, took her by the shoulders, telling her, "I can't let you leave like this." She reacted, suddenly touched. Then he shoved his tongue down her throat. I know this happened because the star is the person who told me. It is believed that that star is probably Angela Lansbury, who was getting 40 million viewers a week when her show was canceled.
Linda Bloodworth Thompson, good friends with the Clintons, remember?
Right.
Best friends with the Clintons.
Now Designing Women is coming back, so is Murphy Brown. But there's one reboot that I can promise you Les Moonves will not want to see again.
And
I think it'll be a Murder She Does if Lansbury comes back, and it'll be Les Moonves on the other end of that one. So you won't be seeing that reboot.
Julie Chen Moonves.
Julie Chen Moonves.
Just when we think, thanks, Raymond, and just when we think we've heard it all, Maxine Waters comes out with a new charge against the Trump administration. It may make your head explode just in time for the weekend. Stay there. By now, you might have thought that Maxine Waters' tank of insults against President Trump has run empty. But check out her latest diatribe from a Congressional Black Caucus Foundation event.
In these United States, with a president the likes of Donald Trump, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I think he's the most deplorable, the most despicable human being I've ever encountered. I believe there has been collusion, and I'm just waiting on Lola, our special counsel, to get those dots connected.
Joining us now with reaction is Horace Cooper, co-founder of Project 21, along with civil rights attorney Leo Terrell. Horace, let's start with you. Maxine Waters is kind of the toast of the town. I mean, if you're someone who wants to impeach Trump and you're anti-Trump, Maxine Waters is kind of, she's what Ruth Bader Ginsburg is for the Supreme Court. She has the cool factor right now. But what of this latest rant?
Well, it demonstrates that everybody's time in the sun ultimately results in them looking foolish. Her trivializing chattel slavery from the 18th and 19th century and comparing it to what happens when people come to this country illegally is unbelievably over the top, unnecessarily overheated rhetoric, and it's painful to hear her say something like this and not be condemned by others.
Yeah, Leo, so you know what we're talking about here. This is the actual quote of what Maxine Waters said. She said, "I know it's right to fight against separation of mothers and fathers and families because of what happened to us in slavery. They sold us at the auction block. They sent the father to one plantation. They sent the children to other plantations. They separated us." So, Leo, is detaining illegal aliens akin to slavery now? That's where we are?
I think it's an excellent analogy, and I'll tell you one thing. When illegal aliens come to this country, some are coming for asylum seeking help. And what you're ignoring and what Horace is ignoring is trivializing what's happening. Separation of families that took place in slavery is taking place right now. The whole world condemned Trump in separating these families right now. And let me finish. And both of these issues, you're talking about victims without any types of recourse or redress. I think it's an excellent analysis, and it magnifies the horrible situation. One last point. Ivanka and Melania felt the same thing. Melania felt the same way about Trump separating these families. It's horrific.
Okay,
it's
well, that's fine, and I think a lot of people didn't like that at all. But it's a different question,
Yes.
and I'm trying to just examine this dispassionately, really, because everybody knows where I stand on immigration. Do criminals get separated from their children?
All the time.
Every day of the week, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, people from all different walks of life. If you commit a crime, sometimes you commit a crime that's not a felony, maybe it's a serious misdemeanor. But if you can't put up the bail, you actually do time. And if you do time and you have kids, you're not with the kids because the kids can't be jailed with you, nor should they be. So the idea that that's somehow slavery, when we didn't bring them to the United States, bringing someone unlawfully to your country to use them for labor, that is hideous, and that is human subjugation. To have penalties for people who violate our laws, I don't see how that is, in this case, akin to slavery, one of the worst sins of human history.
respectfully, Laura, you just broad stroke every illegal alien who comes to the country. And I think you know, respectfully, they come here for different reasons.
We don't know
every
why
illegal
people come
alien
here. That's not what the law says. The law does not say if you come here and you have 3 children and you want to get a job in L.A., then it's okay. That's not what the law says. If the law said that, I would agree with you, Horace. Okay. I don't want to shortchange you here, but on this issue, I think Maxine Waters, as popular as she is among some on the left, I think there are a lot of sort of regular folks say, okay, I didn't like that policy. Maybe I felt terrible for those children, but that's. I don't know. That's just taking it way too far.
Well, absolutely. And by the way, for folks who use the race card for every single option to now turn around and say it can be just as casually used for people who come to this country. And by the way, a few of them do come for asylum, but the overwhelming majority come here voluntarily to work. They seek to engage in labor, and they do so unlawfully. For those people to be treated the same as someone grabbed, kidnapped, put on a ship, and brought here and forced to work over their own will, this whole country, we fought a civil war over this. That's how serious that was. This it trivializes that.
Leo.
I think Maxine Waters has the credibility to make this analogy. And more importantly, thank you for acknowledging a few who are some of these illegals who come over here for asylum. Also, they're forced to come over here. They're exploited. So let's be very clear. Every illegal alien that comes over this, they're exploited. You know that. God. You can laugh all you want, but they're exploited.
Then don't
you know that for a fact. It's horrific.
They're exploited by whom are they exploited? The drug cartels, or the human traffickers, or the employers here who want to seek to keep wages low? I mean, they are exploiting them. I agree with you, but that's not slavery. You made a decision to violate another country's sovereignty by crossing our border, and whatever country you go to and you do that, there are going to be penalties. Are there not, Leo?
What crime do the children commit, Laura and Horace?
We're not talking about the children. We're not talking about the children. We're talking about separating children.
They're involved.
Let's just admit it was over the top, and she shouldn't have said it. Let's just say it. Admit that.
All right, guys. Than't you so much.
No, I'll tell you right now. I think it's a great position.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, guys. Speaking of fearmongers, Barack Obama hit the trail this week again to hit Trump. But what he's claiming about Trump in U.S. history doesn't really add up. Shocking. Reagan biographer and historian Craig Shirley will be here next to tell us why. The Barack Obama comeback tour made its latest stop in Cleveland yesterday, and the former president let loose with some fan-favorite riffs.
People are stressed and they're anxious, and it seems as if all the chatter and anger on television doesn't match up to their lives, and it frays our civic trust, and it makes people feel that the game is rigged and nobody's looking out for them. And historically, in those kinds of conditions, that's ripe for opportunists who try to exploit America's history of divisions, racial, ethnic, religious.
Oh, we're back. I wonder who he's talking about, but presidential historian and Ronald Reagan biographer Craig Shirley says Obama has it all wrong. He joins us now. Craig, great to see you. How are you? All right, Obama says they're scaring people out there, and it's par for the course. They're opportunists, or what did he say?
He needs to study history.
Yeah.
But we've been stressed out many, many times in our 230 years. We're less stressed out now than we have been since the Cold War, the Great Depression, the Civil War, the American Revolution. We've been stressed out many, many times. Now, with the defeat of ISIS and a growing economy, I would say we're less stressed out now than we ever have been in our history, at least since the 1950s.
Yeah, he made another point in this speech that I want to play about what a healthy democracy. In other words, the democracy, representative democracy that elected Trump is not healthy, but in a healthy democracy, he said this.
In a healthy democracy, where everybody's participating and paying attention and listening and voting, people of goodwill in both parties, they call out the bigots and the fear-mongers. When there is a vacuum in our democracy, when we don't vote, when we take our basic rights for granted, other voices fill the void.
Craig.
it's meaningless. It means nothing. This is that. What is a healthy democracy? I've never heard of an unhealthy democracy. First of all, we're not a democracy. We're a republic anyway. He needs to get that straight. But listening to speak and listening to what he had to say, it's just without meaning. It's just vapid.
So more people should vote. He says when you're participating and paying attention and listening. In other words, the people who elected Trump were not paying attention, were not listening, and he kind of throws in, well, people of goodwill in both parties. But again, it's a different way of saying the deplorables, is it not?
Yeah, exactly. But you know, the fact is that a non-vote is a vote. People choose not to vote is, in fact, a vote. No, voting should not be compulsory.
How do you mean? What? Explain that.
Is that they've decided that they don't have a stake in the system, or they're happy with the way things are, or they, for whatever reasons, is that they make an active decision not to go vote.
Yeah. So the idea that everybody has to run out to vote, or it doesn't count, is just. It is a free will. This is not Saddam Hussein. 99% of the people voted.
He's attacking the essence of conservatism, which is free will. Is that he's arguing for compulsory TV watching, compulsory newspaper reading, compulsory voting? What is he talking about?
Just for fun, this isn't a golden oldie. The smart guy about history. Let's watch.
It is just wonderful to be back in Oregon, and over the last 15 months, we've traveled to every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states.
Pilots and air crews around the world, Navy corpsmen on the ground in Afghanistan.
There's a lot of, I don't know what the term is in Austrian, wheeling and dealing.
Austrian.
Those are funny. But you know, the funny thing is that he didn't make that mistake once on corpsmen. He did it repeatedly. Nobody went to Mr. President. It's Corman.
Well, you know, again, he's the brilliant one. Trump is just bumbling along. Okay, Craig, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Up next, Last Bite. Time now for the Last Bite. Take a look at this beaut. This was on the New Jersey Transit earlier today. Okay, the guy is shaving, and I mean shaving with shaving cream. Is there, I mean, they just need to bring a plastic bag or a bottle and just go to the bathroom there while they're sitting there, too. This is ridiculous. Oh, my gosh. Everybody in the storm's path, please stay safe. Shannon Bream, the Fox News at Night team.